Hi everyone, thanks for picking us. It's always a pleasure to have more than 6 people in a room. So I accepted this particular session for a particular reason, which is that I have a very close heart bond with Angoulême, which is where they've just come from. They spent the month in residency over there. Now, Angoulême, which sounds very much like a Goan village, like Karanzalem or anything of that sort, basically is a strange, surreal town which some of you may have seen. Can we switch off a few lights here? Because our visuals are going to be wasted otherwise. And those of you who are way at the back, you're going to like us more if you come a little bit in front. So you may want to do that. Can we just switch off these lights, at least the ones that are over this projection? So it's this peculiar medieval town which looks like, more lights please, if you can just switch these off. Can you see it better? Yeah. So Wes Anderson's French Dispatch was shot in Angoulême. So that is one of its claims to fame. It is a town which is basically home to a museum of comics, which has got like 240,000 people visiting every year. It has 10 temporary exhibitions in a year. The city has got murals which are based on comic book artists' work. You don't need to be told what that rocket is and where it's from. It is also a place that hosts a very interesting residency, which I have been a part of and which has a big role in my personal and professional life, where they host up to 65 international authors in a year, right? So it's a special kind of a place. It is the kind of a place where you are going to see people working this hard. It is also a kind of place where there are going to be waves and waves of people. It's like the Tower of Babel with people of different nationalities speaking with each other. I'm going to right now, just so you get introduced a little bit to their work, show you the work of Troops. And my question over here would be, who are you and why comics? Basically, why are you writing and drawing? Because we all have a certain boot camp brain, which is why we do this. So Troops, do you have a mic?
I'll take this one, okay. So, who I am?
Yeah.
That's it, that's the first question.
Basically,
okay.
c'est ça.
So I'm a French author and a human being, something like that. Sorry for my English, I was a bit bad in French accent, but I hope you're gonna understand it. So I'm doing comics since I'm a kid, I've read comics when I was a kid, always draw, and it's really natural for me to make comics and draw and write and do this stuff like that. So I was not very good at school, but I'm always drawing and doing comics again and again. In the independent scene, a bit like that. And slowly by slowly, I go after to art school in Toulouse, in the south of France, and after I reached the school of Angoulême, where we are talking about. And I was studying there. There's a school of comics, a art school of comics. And I was in touch there in publication people, and I started to publicate and to publish.
One interesting thing about you, Troops, is that you have done some work solo, such as the examples that are on the screen right now.
Yes.
But you have also worked in collaboration with Baudouin. And I'm always curious about the kind of experience it is for people who both write and draw to actually work with somebody else. So what led you to choose collaboration in certain work, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, collaboration is not very often for me, So I collaborate with people that I like the work and I think they are friends, Instead of that, it's very difficult. And I never collaborate with somebody who writes me a scenario or something. So it's more collaboration with Baudouin, it's more like an exchange. And in fact, these books are very particular because we are doing some traveling in borders place. Like the first one we did was in Mexico and USA borders, in El Paso and Ciudad de Juarez, which is a town very, very dangerous, sort of, to be short. And we are doing like a diary on comics, in fact. So we meet the people. And every day we're doing some new pages telling, today we meet Miranda, and Miranda said that to us and everything. So that's a diary place. And we do this book during the time we are traveling.
Are there specific qualities that Baudouin had which made it important to collaborate with him? Like how did the division of work or thought process shift?
The main quality is that we are together working very fast, sort of.
Yeah.
And we don't go back to the thing, we directly draw in black and white, and we do the thing like a diary, exactly like a diary, And after, if we 2 or 3 days after we do something wrong before, we don't
go back to
the thing. We just say, hey, 2 pages before we were wrong. Okay. So we go further like that. That's the main quality.
Passing it on to Lokesh, if you could also give people a sense, because not everybody here is entrenched in comics, so it'd be lovely if you could tell them.
Sure. Hi, I am Lokesh. And your first question, who are you? I am a jackal. Not a cow. Cow is inside my stomach. So I'm making comics. I should say I'm into making comics last maybe 10 years or so. So much newer to comics. So in making of comics, but not reading of comics. So as we know in India, at least I come from Hindi. I'm from Bhopal. I grown up reading popular Hindi comics like Raj comics, Hindi superhero comics, and Nagraj, Super Commando 2, and Amar
You still write in Hindi, right?
I write in Hindi, but that market of comics and all of that publication actually stopped in post 90s and early 2000. All of that stopped for different reasons, and the later the graphic novel and all the other mediums that including you, Arijit, and many of you guys started, that was still new to me later. But I studied painting in MS University, Faculty of Fine Arts. I came there in 98 and finished my studies in 2004, doing my master's in painting. I was initially exhibiting my works for very long time. I used to exhibit my paintings, my canvases, my watercolors in exhibition galleries. It was later, and I also got interested in doing children's book illustrations, and that is where I started publishing with Eklavya, Muskan, and some of these publications, who specially published in Hindi, and as an illustrator. But I was also, in similar time, I used to also write short stories. And when slowly I got, much later, actually I got introduced to the genre of graphic novels. I started when I saw Persepolis and some of the other such examples. Then I was driven towards, okay, I should also make comics my own, because I myself write my short stories, I illustrate, why not I bring both of them together, and not necessarily write only for children, which I was doing as illustrator, but write many other aspects of life into my comics.
Okay. Yeah. One noteworthy thing about Lokesh is he is a real quick change artist with styles. Like pretty much from comic to comic, you cannot even recognize that it's the same person. Yeah. So, and you see it even more so in the work that they are actually doing during their collaborative residency. It's quite unusual. Now, because I'm not really within the fold of Villa Swagatam or of Institute Francais or of anybody, I can ask you this question, which is that beyond the tokenism behind this kind of an Indo-French collaboration, we all know that when there's a residency opportunity and a grant, we will write whatever it takes to get that. You know, whether there is actually collaboration in our soul or whether, so this is the truth. I know we all do it. Yeah. So, given that this is the case, what is the lived experience of such a mashup? You know, is it contrived? Is there something actually collaborative happening, or you're just finding out ways to like walk side by side and do whatever the hell you want to do?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the writing applications to residencies. And now there are actually, I heard there are programs who teach you how to write applications also.
Or better still, get somebody else to write it.
As well as ChatGPT, yeah. But yeah, yeah, those also comes along with this. But if I say about it, so there was an application process, but I was not aware of this program, frankly saying. And actually, the French Institute wrote to me that actually deadline was passed, but I didn't know about there was an application out there, and they wrote and they said, why don't you apply? We want you to apply. I don't know how they came to know, and I applied, and there was an interview, and they asked, how are you going to this is going to be collaboration, and what will be your role as a collaborator? And I didn't know Troops, neither he knew me, and I just wrote very simple that the person who I am going to meet, a new person, I don't have any plan of collaboration because I don't know the person. My way of doing will be when we both meet, it will be initial.
You'll see how it goes.
Friendship. It will be about building a friendship, knowing each other, and maybe something might come out. If something come out, it will be.
And Troops, it's your first visit to India. So what was it like for you? What were your real reasons?
My real reason is to go to India. Maybe it was the first one, and second it was to see what's going on here on comics as well, you know. And when I see the location, you know, things. What was interesting, he was not only an author; he was also a publisher, and also doing a festival, independent festival, which is very close to my practice of comics, in fact, which is good. And after, to come here, I'm just telling to the Maison des Auteurs but I'm gonna do like a diary as well, you know, like we do with Godwin. Like I said, we made in Mexico and Colombia. I'm very able to do that, you know. I'm doing sketch, you know, every day. I'm a very sketcher.
It's actually, I don't know how many people are aware, but there's a very glorious tradition of the Carnet du Voyage, or like a book of travel in Europe. Like they're very strong. They love this stuff. Récit de voyage. They have a big thing of all kinds of known and unknown people having their journals unfold during their travels. So It's very much within your DNA, less so within yours. But we'll get to that part coming up.
Yeah, this is very close to comics. In fact, you know, you can go to this one, Carnet de Voyage, to the comics, and I'm between always in these borders of things.
Okay. Now, one thing I can totally relate, because the reason why I went to France was not because of a burning passion for France, but because somebody developed a fear of flying, and the French Institute asked me, would you check in, do you want to go to France? And I'm like, I think so, you know, I don't mind so much. So basically there was that. But one thing that we all realize is that people from colonies always seem to have their homework much more in place about the Western world than vice versa. So in so many ways, we go there much more aware of what we might need, what the culture is like, who the canonical films are, what's going on, and not so much the other way around. And I wanted to ask you about what your experience about that has been, Lokesh, when you went over there and met what you did.
Yeah. So, so in a way, for me going to France, it was first time. But not in Europe. So I had been to Europe earlier in some of the other places, other countries. But the huge difference was when earlier times when I went to Europe in some other places, it was always either with a group of many more artists and was for a very short time. So when you go with a lot of people, actually your attention is very different, and you go with the people there. No? You are seeing with what others are seeing. But here I was for a longer time staying there, working and exploring on my own. And it was a very, very rich experience, I must say. And also I went there with this kind of, I think I was very open. I went there with this openness that I am going there for learning, for exploring. And as you very rightly said, please all of you also sometime explore this place called Maison des Auteurs. It's a wonderful place in Angoulême because it houses comics artists as well as animators from across the world, from different geographies, as well as from the France. And it is such a wonderful experience to be there and work on your own graphic narrative, whether short or longer, because you are among all of them and you are getting so much energy. You are exploring how they are working, what kind of narratives they are writing in this political time or in their own social context. So it was a very, very rich experience as a in Angoulême itself. But it was much more than that. Maybe you can talk about that.
For you, what I wanted to ask is that in France, I don't know whether there is a tradition of ateliers where multiple comic book authors get together and work under the same space. I'm not sure if you're part of some kind of a collective or a
Absolutely
atelier.
not. I'm always walking by my own.
So you're also a wolf, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm living in a jungle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for a person from Europe, what is the attraction of being in a residency space? I can see what it is like for Lokesh, but for you, what was it like? What do you seek when you go to that?
For me, it's like a discovery thing. Learning to be with other peoples, and it's like a journey as well. It's part of the something different. It's part of the journey to stay in Angoulême like that. And for me, it's back to like a student time. Because I was in Angoulême when I was a kid, when I was 20 years old, something, and so back to the past, maybe.
For those of you, I hope you're looking at the screen over there. Basically, these are the ways the lives of comic book authors suddenly turn into something so much larger than life. So there are the experiences of them at the table, which makes its way into the carnet de voyage or the travel
Yes. Mm-hmm.
voyage that is next to it. This is Troob's work, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's a story that's evolving as it's happening, rather than a plot line, which is incredible. I can see some other experiences of some kind of a live drawing experience. César?
Like what we do with the
With
Lokesh,
Benoit?
we go when we're in France. We take my car and we go to Lyon, which is at the east, of France. So we cross all France, west east. And during this travel, we meet a lot of people. It was discovery for Lokesh, and we went there to make some exhibition, have a workshop to do, many things to do. So it was good to do with him and to make him discover that.
There you are in your car.
Yeah, this is
And
my
I think
car.
that is Lokesh's artwork over there.
Yeah.
And I personally think that this is absolutely stunning, what you've done during your travels.
Yeah.
This seems to be a friend of yours, Latino,
Yes,
is it? Who you
as
met?
well, a friend, is a publisher as well.
I see.
It's a publisher of my last book. This one is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the new book. So we went here
And-
to sell. Yeah.
And this is Lokesh's.
Yeah. So the way I think, as both of us were working there, as you very well said, the traveler comics is there in the France and in Europe in their DNA. It's not in my DNA, but DNA, if I reverse it, becomes A and D, and is a word that connects. It's between this and that, and it's a beautiful word. So not in DNA. So that is where the travel happens, I feel, and that is where you are open to meet whom you don't know and the places you be. And yeah, this is part of a comics. So as beautifully Troob's, the way Troob's, I saw Troob's working on his way of working is like taking visual notes, everyday diary, which I also find very closer to Mario Miranda's diaries. The rich Mario Miranda diaries, then 1951, 1915, the three books which are, I have seen at least those three books, where every day of his life he was documenting, and Troob work in a very similar way. My doing is a little different because I keep waiting for, who is this interesting guy or a story that I'm going to meet. Till then I think I wait. So I keep absorbing, thinking, meeting, and then something happens.
Would it be right to say that there is different approaches? Like there is a
Yes.
blank slate approach, which is something like what a Guy Delisle or somebody would do, which is, okay, now here I am, and now this is what I saw, and this is what happened, and then I passed by a hospital, and this is what happened, kind of a story. And then there is the madly obsessive, research-oriented work of somebody like a Joe Sacco. So where do you all locate yourself vis-a-vis the kind of gaze you go with towards what is unknown? Because one thing, I have always found it shocking how people can go to a place for a short duration, for a 2-month stint or a 6-month stint, and feel audaciously confident enough to write something about the culture they're located in. I find that startling. I mean, I envy people who feel they're confident enough to do that, but I'm also a little bit suspicious of it. They have to be white, or I wonder whether a fresh pair of eyes actually allows you to see something that if you're ingrained too much, no, you have to be white for that. What do you feel about that? Blank slate versus hyper research about an absolutely unknown place you're going to.
Of course. I have two way of doing comics. In fact, there's the one way of doing it every day, like sketching things, and very diary things. Like this book we did.
If anyone
with,
would like to see, I
Baudouin,
can pass these around.
And this way is more like doing everyday diarying, everyday sketching on the little books, I think, and having notes and every day I was starting to do pages like this, you know. I do it very fast in the moment I'm here, you know. What I'm doing on the pages or what I'm lived like the day before, the day before, but not very much longer. And after I have another work is to make it on a much longer time and to make a big conception of storyboarding things, you know, like in a cinema or like this, and take time to build a real scenario and a real way to have comics, you know, with playback and things like that. So that's the second way. So I was moving on the first way and on a more longer way.
Okay. Now, one word that I heard you all use over and over was the idea that this was a bit of a road trip collaboration. And I wanted to get a sense of how it continues now that you're in Goa. Does it have a similar flavor, or has the game changed a little bit? I can see there's a lot of interesting food going on. I happened to meet you some days ago. What has it been like in the India segment of things for you, now that Lokesh is in familiar territory, and what's it been like for you?
Yeah, for me it's a very discovery, in fact, for sure, because it's the first time for me in India and in Goa too. So it's all discovering for me. For me, it's a road trip in my head, you know. I'm I'm not doing a very big distance, but in my head it's a very long distance too. So it could be a metaphoric road trip for me.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I think for me, every day I'm trying to find a new bar for tooths.
Achha, you're not talking about the artistic bar.
So that we can think, ideate. So yeah, Goa has opened a lot to me.
It's
And
an
very,
approach.
very fluid. Yeah.
It's a call. This is a call for a bus, a free bus for us.
Yeah, but also saying that because it's also about in France, the wonderful time on the road trip that we went together, and now the time we are standing here. One thing that we kept talking, because what you were like, there is a 6-hour journey from Angoulême to Lyon, and in 6 hours we were talking about so many things. And also it was interesting in our talk how we realized that what is this collaboration is going to be about, and what are we going to draw, even if short, something that we are doing. It was more about that both of us realized that we both are looking at the same landscape during this time when we are together.
Absolutely.
But what are these two different eyes that is looking at the same story or the same landscape? That will be interesting to capture.
Are you actually in a shared vehicle over here? Are you renting a car and going around, or it's more a metaphorical road trip at this point?
Here it is metaphorical because auto will like
Two pilots. You can go like yeah.
So we wait. Also, road also becomes that our waiting place. Yeah.
One thing that I cannot help but bring up is that it is so very hard to make a living as somebody that is practicing visual storytelling in India. It is, unless you're a crazy person, in which category I firmly belong, or unless you have a sugar daddy or you have somebody underwriting your life, it is not something that is very easily possible. And I know that for all the third world country people that go for residencies, it is literally your borrowed finite time which truly belongs to you to get work done. You don't get chômage, you don't get any kind of money for being out of work and do your comics, no grants coming by easily. So it's really a very, very precious commodity. And I know that while even my comic book artist friends in France may be poverty line in the way place that they stand economically, they are still doing nothing but comics. So it is possible to live. And I was wondering if you could shine a little bit of light about the fiscal realities of doing what we do, because it's all great, we do beautiful stuff, but it is not easy to live like this. So it will be good if you can tell us about your experience with this, both of you.
John.
Yeah, so you are very right, Amrita. Maybe about France you can tell, but in India, certainly not just me, I have so many friends, and just doing one work as a creative artist is very difficult to sustain, to have your bread and butter ready. That does not mean that people are not doing. They are also adventuring or taking all risk and only doing that also. So I respect a lot that. But saying that also it comes with different kind of experiences also, your choices and your what you select as your choices. So for me, as I said that I began with exhibiting my work for 6, 7, 8 years. Initially, I was exhibiting in art galleries and also able to sell the works at that time. It also came with that realizing the space in which I was doing that. I didn't want to do that anymore there because the kind of the white cube gallery and and what it was providing and what it was limiting for me as an artist, I found it very limiting an experience. And that is where actually when I started making the books and doing writing stories and comics and children's book illustration, I realized how it is reaching out actually in the hands, whether of the children or adults or many other people. And I felt there is a value to it. Now it is difficult to sustain in India just doing illustration or writing books or creative books. So I am equally very much interested from very beginning into art education contest. Then that is where slowly, and so now I also work with an institution and I work full time. So from morning 10 o'clock to my 6 o'clock in Delhi is my office hours.
It's worth noting that one of the side effects of this kind of difficulty of making ends meet in India is that people have chosen the option of doing anthologies and collectives much more over here, because that allows you to do a one-shot story and still have a book come out of it, rather than derail yourself for 3 years with a tiny little advance that is not going to cover your life.
Yeah,
so that
exactly.
is,
I was just coming to that one is the job aspect, but also realizing that you are not doing it alone, and also as you are learning the medium. Some of us together came, 4 of us friends in 2015, and we initiated a collective for publishing independent comics and picture books and zine, which we call Blue Jackal. Please, you can check it on Instagram and website. And that is where we started publishing independent short comics, like some of it is I think in the running there, and it can be also there. And not just one person, not just 4 of us, but we started inviting many more contributors to that. And as a collective, it becomes an interesting space because we are regularly meeting and discussing comics there and publishing. Yeah.
Yeah, being an artist of comics in France is not that easy too. As you know, I'm Luta, so there's a different level of people, and depends of the way you do comics in France. For sure, there's more publication, there's more publishers, the market is bigger, for sure, and people are more involved to buy comics, to offer comics to everybody, but really depends on what you do, in fact. And for me, in my position, like you say, I was doing that, after school, I was involved with little publishing. I was starting to do like coloring, just colors for other people, and start little by little publishing my own things, But I always have this position of doing comics all day, all time, all my life. And if it's not money, it's not money,
Yeah.
I reduce my life, that's all. I'm living in a jungle, as you said.
But Trubs, you
it's
have
one of
very
the ways.
handsome books. Would you be qualified as a mainstream author or a more independent author in France? How are you perceived in France?
Yeah, more independent, between two levels, I'm always doing the gap, always moving into these two parts of things, Some of books are really well published, big publisher, and some are little independent publisher. Because I want just to do my own things, And slowly by slowly, it's. I really think that doing comics is a very hard time practicism, You have to do that every day, to be fast, to be efficient. So
Okay.
you need a long time to do it.
The city that they were in, Angoulême, it has a bookshop which is devoted entirely to visual books and to comics. And just to get a sense of what are the kind of numbers, this shop dedicated entirely to comics sells 75,000 titles a year. That is the kind of numbers that we are talking about
Yeah,
difference
that's so
between people's buying habits with things. I have one last question, after which I'll leave it to you all to ask what you will of any of us. First of all, is there a unique French gaze or an Indian gaze? And maybe you can answer that about each other rather than about yourself. And one particular thing that I can vouch for vis-a-vis my own work is I did 3 books, largish books, in 10 years sitting in France. And all three books were incredibly anchored in India. And in a sense, the fact of being far away or being geographically removed from home allowed me a very different gaze upon my own material and my own land. So both these, if you feel like sharing anything about these things, because when one is in a foreign land, in some ways one is always weighing it against what one knows, which is from back home, measuring against what is known. So either of these themes, if you'd like to say anything, if there's a French gaze and an Indian gaze that you notice in each other.
Yes, I don't know, but there's some strange. I think many people might have that kind of experience. So the first day I reached, so also it was January, like it was so cold. In France, the same thing, like on the 3rd of January I landed there. And it was so cold. I never seen this kind of cold in my life. And when I reached to Angoulême, which was like quite far. Finally, I reached there and I was so happy. I wanted to immediately I took out my camera and I made a reel kind of thing, a video. I wanted to show to my parents, especially, and my family, that okay, I am here and look at the beauty, such a beautiful place. And I love everything. I kept narrating. I made a long video and I sent to them. And the answer came from, very beautiful, beta, but log kahan hai? Where are the people? And suddenly, oh yeah.
I had a similar experience when my parents visited for the first time. They literally thought that there was a curfew. Like they didn't understand what was going on. There was absolutely no one to be seen.
It's a different question of gaze, Indian gaze. I don't know, but I think it's more general Asian, feeling. But you are more close to the animals and to the plants and to the nature in general, which what we are in France or in Europe. And
you really think
I
so?
really think that. I can feel that on the dogs on the street, on the birds who are not afraid of people and whatever, the cows and whatever, and the plants. There's something you are more respecting this.
What happens in your jungle, dude? I mean,
I try to do that,
Okay.
Maybe I'd refocus on that because it's my sort of my focus, but I really appreciate it here, and I didn't know that I'm gonna feel that here when I arrive in India, but I feel it directly.
Would there be questions that you'd like to ask? And also, may I request that these books that have generously traveled into the audience, can somebody collect them and bring them back? I would be very grateful if you can do that. Okay, there are some hands going up. Is there a volunteer who can take it on the mic?
Yeah.
Actually, sorry. There's one hand at the back that was raised first.
Good morning, sirs, ma'am. What I wanted to ask is, one of the first graphic French novellas that I read was by Antoine Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince. So I want to know whether he was an inspiration for you growing up. And also, in general, I want to know your takes and your opinions on
Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
mangas, which is Japanese literature. So I want to know about that as well.
Yeah. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry is an important people, but he's more viewed in France like a writer than a drawer, He makes few drawings, but very nice and very beautiful. But he's really more like a poet and a writer. Yeah.
Although I have to say that for me, he was a very, very big deal. So perhaps because we don't have a canonical separation between this is comics and this is illustrated books, for sure it may be a bit different over here.
Yeah. But he's not using comics language, in fact, it's more illustration thing, Comics is more mixing words and drawing together, which is another sort of problematic language. And about the manga, now in France you were talking about the publication in France in a bookshop and whatever, but half of the books are manga,
Manga in translation.
Yeah, manga in translation is a huge thing as well, like everybody here.
Yeah, and as I can see, maybe you are interested in, maybe you make also comics, or maybe you are making a comics. So manga is also a very huge tradition actually. It is not a singular kind of making. So within manga there are some very beautiful tradition which is called Gekiga, which comes from 60s and late 50s, 60s and 70s. if you haven't explored, it will be beautiful to explore that side of manga, which is called Gekiga, which come from everyday life experiences. Most of them are much like adult stories or everyday stories, and so very social context it is coming from. Yeah.
You know that France is changing its relationship with manga also because in the very same Angoulême, which is like the pillar of canonical stuff, there is now a school that teaches manga. There is actually a manga school in France which is teaching.
Yeah, to have another production of manga, a French production, yeah, for
Also,
sure.
I'm sure. Any other questions? There is Lina here, right behind. Okay, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
A couple of things. It's very lovely to see. I'm going to catch you because I write books for children. And so, in fact, I was actually looking for a comic illustrator. I think I've come to the correct session.
He's the one.
I know.
I'm the one.
I'll think of you. I'll think of you as well. I can't afford you probably, but I also wanted to know whether your books have been translated to English for us to understand because they're fabulous.
Unfortunately, no, not yet.
And have you been influenced by the Asterix comics? Because I saw a couple of illustrations that look very straight from out of an Asterix comic. Asterix and Obelix.
Oh yeah, okay, of course. It was one on by, like I love it when I was a kid, for
Yeah,
sure.
so I can see the influence a little bit in the book.
Certainly.
Yeah. And what did you do you said 9 to 5, you work somewhere?
Yeah. So there is a problem with
No, it's not there. It's there.
Yeah? Okay.
Go on.
Yeah. So I work with an organization called Art First Foundation, where we are into art education and we work very closely across India with the schools, जहाँ बच्चे जाते हैं, and we work closely with teachers. We are doing teachers training towards art-based education. We do long 3 years training with the schools and also come up with very interesting, engaging curriculum. And how to unfold that, we have a small team of artist educators and we keep traveling and we work. So for that program, I'm heading the program. I work there as director education now.
Where is that based?
We are based in Delhi, but we work across India.
Can we have one question here, please? Yeah.
Yeah, so hi. Thank you for this wonderful session. I'm Lina Vincent. I'm an art historian and I also run a mentorship program with Sonapura. So I sort of from looking at the work that was shown, I think that I want to ask about the possibility of talking about the very political in the space of the comic book. And I think this is open to all three of you because you have looked at these subjects. So if you could comment on that, please.
I can say that in France, there's more and more political comics, happens since the last 20 years or 50 years, 15 years. There are more and more things like documentary comics and more. We talk about Joe Sacco. We heard that, maybe this author, which is an American author, and is well translated in French, well known, and he made a lot of little, babies, sort of.
Yeah. Can we show today 1 or 2 examples so it will be easy to also talk about? Because can you switch off this slide so it will be more visible? Yeah, even this one. Actually, I don't know which one to show because all of them are politically charged. So, for example, can we go to Chudin? Maybe to begin with, and this is a comics here somewhere. Maybe it is traveling.
Can we have that?
Yeah. There's a small comics. It is traveling behind, and which is called Chudail. It is in Hindi, and also translation is available in English. Chudail, we are familiar with the term Chudail, right, across India. And this is the comics, and basically it talks about Chudail, and Chudail being a Chudail, it can do anything, and that is why I was fascinated with this shapeshifter identity of a Chudail. And in this, it's a humorous comics, which here the Chudail actually enters into Brahman woman, middle age or old age Brahman woman's body, and then what all happens around in her life when a Chudail is living inside her and calling from inside, hey, Brahmani to kya kar rahi hai, na? Like, na? Hey, so I'm talking about the politics can come in so many ways actually, It need not be only in a क्या वो पत्रकारिता की तरह लिखे, journalistic manner में लिखे. That is also important. But I'm equally interested in writing in fiction and how in everyday life we see it happening around in our life. So, but then I also want to show you another example, which is before this or this one. So in this context, I want to talk about this another short comics that I don't know if you know Professor G.N. Sai Baba. Many of you know. He recently passed away. And Professor G.N. Sai Baba was picked up by police and arrested, and it's a long story. And he was a 90% disabled who fought for people from various marginal castes and Adivasis. And for that reason, he was picked up under the Operation Green Hunt context. And from 2014 till just few months back, he was put in the jail. He was continuously refused his bail. In that context, when I came across one of a personal letter by his wife, who put a letter on Facebook in 2019, and as an appeal. And then I started researching about Professor Sai Baba, and you can go to Blue Jackal and read this comic. It puts together what the case, the Sai Baba case, and as an appeal. But also, comics can take multiple form. It cannot limit to just I alone or anybody alone as a political thing. We cannot do it just as a alone thing. So once this comics was published, Professor Sai Baba's wife called me up. She didn't know me. She came to know through friends that I have done this. And she called me up and had a long chat, and she shared with me. She said, Lokesh, Professor Sai Baba has been writing poems from jail. And he had written more than 50 poems inside the jail, which are in English, and also translation are done in Hindi. And she shared all of them with me very generously. And immediately what I did was, actually I wrote to as many friends I knew that we should do something with these poems. And that was a Facebook time, not an Instagram time, if I remember. And then we all decided on a particular day, we took some 1 week time or something, including Orijit and so many people. And everybody reflected on Sai Baba's poem and started putting posts on that. So many ways we can.
In interest of time, we have just 2 minutes
Sure.
left. I'm not going to take more questions. There is a few more minutes left. I actually wanted to ask Troops about something. France itself is also entering, like it used to be a bastion of free thought and people saying whatever they wanted to unchecked and being much more of an embracing place than it is right now. In the years going forth, how do you see your own work getting ready to meet the changing climate in your own country? What is it like?
About the changing climate.
Political climate.
Yeah. It's changing a lot, of course. Yeah, and quick and fast. And but we are doing some like usually we go on strike and we have a force and we talk a lot. You know, in France we have a lot of little way to talk in little way like that and right and left and that's it. So we still continue to do that, but the whole world is a bit changing like that, and it's a difficult thing, yeah, for sure.
We have probably got time for one question here.
Actually, I
2
wanted
minutes.
to ask a question to you, Amrita, and to you. How is the scene in India for comics changing? Because we went from reading Tinkle, Tenali Raman, and then there was a big gap where people didn't really read comics. And then people started reading Western comics and Japanese comics, as was said before. So how did we, where are we going now with comics such as yours, which I saw and I really liked, because that is something we can all relate to, that culture. So what do you think about that?
That's actually a fab question. Now, I had a different answer to give a year ago. Right now, I'm in the process of curating a visual storytelling exhibition with the Comics Museum in France. And I realized that there is so much that has happened in this country that we had no idea about. Like there were things happening in 1920s and 30s, but locked away in Bengali, locked away in Malayalam, locked away in languages that actually don't bother to even open up the doors in English to anybody. So there was a lot happening in comics. We had our grand masala mix years of all the Chacha Chaudharys and Bahadur and Bela and all these kind of yarns, adventure yarns, which also died out. And then in post-liberalization India, we had the age of the activist auteurs, which are foreign educated, writing in English, kind of people working in full-length graphic novel form. So you have, and they were interestingly published by big publishers. So Arijit, me, Vishwajyoti Ghosh, you had Parismita Singh, the whole bunch of us did that. I would like to say that we are booming, but the reality is that we are not booming because of the fiscal difficulties in being a comics author. Most people are doing anthologies, collectives, quietly sharing things on Instagram. There is a lot of Insta artists like the Bakery Prasads, like the Priyanka Paul, Art Horing, several people like that who are doing things for that medium. So I think there's a way to go, but it is probably not as economically tenable to be leading into a booming thing, even vis-a-vis the advances that we get from publishers.
Yeah. Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Amrita?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, Amrita has given a kind of larger view, which is very important for all of us to know. But at the same time, as I can see, there is spark in your eyes. Maybe you also want to make comics. So make comics. Yeah, that is the beginning. And therefore, actually, many of us actually around some 8 years ago, 7 years ago, across India who are making independent comics, we realize there is a difficulty. As such, everybody cannot reach out to big publishers, maybe they don't allow, whatever difficulties, and there is a scope of independently publishing your self-published comics. Okay, even if you publish that, where are you going to show it? And that is where we all came together, started this umbrella kind of movement or an organization. It's not even an organization, it's an umbrella called Indie Comics Fest. And now it is happening last 7 years across so many cities. And in the Delhi edition, some of us friends together, some of they are also sitting here. We all come together and every year we organize that. In Bombay it is happening, in Kerala it is happening. Goa, I think initially it happened once or twice, but why don't you start?
Is there one last question? That gentleman has been holding up his hand for a while. Yes.
Sorry.
5 minutes.
My question is to both of you. We've seen both of your artwork today in comics, and you have a very different. Both of you are different individuals, and you have different style of art. So, how has that influenced your art in like currently, and how has that translated into your collaboration?
I think they kind of spoke a little bit about that, no? I think that part has been addressed. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Troops, is there?
Maybe we can meet you after this also if you'll have to speak with us.
Probably.
Of course, there's a room for that, and हमारे पास कुछ काम ही नहीं है इसके बाद आजकल हम ये है ना सब लोग हम मिल सकते हैं बट हाँ कोलैबोरेशन के लिए हम वो टेबल पे शाम को बैठते हैं वहाँ.
I think we are through with time. Thank you so much for your attention and for being here. And I know it's nearing lunch, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Lokesh. Thank you, Troops. And I hope you keep making beautiful work.
Thank you so much, Amrita, and thank you all of you and the institution for inviting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.